Okay, so I just got done watching Echo on Disney Plus. All 5 episodes just dropped on both Disney Plus and Hulu. You can go stream it right now. This is gonna be my review for it. I'm gonna start off non-spoiler, so if you haven't seen it yet, that's fine. I'll let you know when we start getting into spoilers. But first, let's just do some backstory on this because so Echo is a character that was introduced in the Hawkeye Disney Plus series. Maya Lopez, played by Alako Cox, she was kind of one of the villains of that show, and like there's a pretty decent chunk of her story told in that series. And then we get this spin-off, and this is one of those shows that like nobody asked for. No, everybody was kind of like, well, why? Like this is not a character that people have been begging to see in live action, a character that people really want to have her own spin-off series. And I'm pretty sure her show was announced before we even saw her on Hawkeye, but even after Hawkeye, that didn't really kind of, elevate our hype for an Echo solo series. It just wasn't there. There wasn't really interest in the show. But I mean, you look at something like what was done in the DCU with Peacemaker, where Peacemaker was a character nobody really knew about or cared about before the Suicide Squad, and then they did a spin-off, and that turned out to be one of the best things DC ever did. And still, Echo, wasn't really something anybody was really looking forward to a whole lot, but then they dropped that trailer, and man, it was like an instant change. Everybody suddenly was on board the Echo train because, oh, TVMA. Oh, this trailer actually looks pretty good. Everybody was suddenly super excited for the show, myself included. It was a fantastic trailer, and the only trailer that I actually ended up watching because I just wanted to savor what we actually got in this drop. And so I had a lot of excitement going into this. And then last night, some of the early reviews from critics had come out talking about it being a bit of a mixed bag. And now today we actually get to see the episodes for ourselves. And I will say, I do agree in some regards that it definitely has issues. But I still really enjoyed Echo. I still really liked it. I don't love it, but I did really like Echo. And I thought it was overall a good show. I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score had come out. For critics, it was like a 60 something, but I think for audience score, it was like a 78. And that's probably how I would rate it. A 78, you want to do a 1 through 10 scale. I'd probably give it like a 7.8, maybe in. Yeah, 7.8 is a solid score for this show because it has its really high highs and then its really low lows, because you can really pick out the episodes that are really good and then the episodes that are kind of lacking, which is one of the reasons I'm really glad they dropped 5 episodes all at once, because if a couple of these episodes, if they release just one episode a week, I would not have been satisfied. Particularly episode 2 and 3, I didn't really care for those a whole lot. I found myself a bit bored. But episodes 1 and 4 were my favorites. 4, I think, overall was my favorite. And 5 was good as well, but also it seemed a bit rushed. And that was really kind of the biggest issue for Echo, was just that the pacing was an issue, and that was something that plenty of other critics have pointed out as well. That the pacing is not great, especially when you have the first episode, where the first episode is really focusing more on backstory. You get flashbacks to pre-Hawkeye and her life before that, and leading up to Hawkeye, and then you get to see they actually use quite a bit of footage from the Hawkeye Disney Plus series, which a lot of people have been complaining about. Personally, I didn't mind. I mean, they don't make it obvious either. So if you hadn't seen Hawkeye, you could go into this show without watching Hawkeye, which I think is actually a good thing. Makes it more accessible. And they don't frame it in a way of where it's like, oh, here's flashback to the Hawkeye show. No, it's just part of the story, because that whole episode is like a build up through the timeline. So I really enjoyed it, especially because, like I said, a decent chunk of Maya's development was happening on Hawkeye. So you kind of have to include that here to really tell this story about Maya Lopez. And let's see, the other issue that a lot of people have talked about, and I do have to agree with, is just that the story does seem a bit unfocused. There's a lot that's being done here. You have Maya and her own journey with becoming a hero, kind of redeeming herself. You have her relationship with Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. You have her coming back into the lives of these people from her past, her family. You also have the history of her culture, of the Choctaw native tribe, and her connection to her ancestors and getting her powers and all that stuff. There's a lot going on here, and I will say that is one of the aspects that I do wish kind of wasn't a part of it, is her getting superpowers, because I did really like the grounded tone and feel of this series. And it just felt a bit unnecessary. I did really enjoy the showcase of the ancestral lineage to her, and how, you know, her ancestors are guiding her here and all that stuff. I really enjoyed that, and just getting to see this Native American culture on display is beautiful. That's one of my, you know, people talk about things being woke nowadays, and yeah, some things are, if you want to use that term, woke for the sake of woke, but things like this I really enjoy, where it just shows you a culture that you're not familiar with and just kind of lets you be a part of it for a bit. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about Miss Marvel, was getting to see that culture on display, and you get a very similar thing here as well. So I did really enjoy that. Kind of also really reminded me of what we recently got in What If Season 2 with Kahori. That was a great episode. There's definitely similar vibes here as well. But not only that, but specifically with Alaqua Cox, who of course is the star of the series, Maya Lopez, and we'll talk about her more in a second. You also have the ASL concept here featured also, which is fantastic. I've always been fascinated by sign language. It's always been something that I've wanted to learn. I've just never actually had the time to sit down and fully immerse myself in the world of sign language and ASL. But just anytime I see it, I'm just so fascinated. I just think it's so cool. And to have a show like this where your lead character is deaf and speaks only through sign language, and everybody else is speaking through sign language to her, and there's a major use of silence with that, which I really enjoyed, because it puts you in the perspective of Maya. And speaking of Alaqua Cox, man, her performance here is fantastic, especially when you think about it from the perspective of before she was cast in Hawkeye, Alaqua Cox was working in an Amazon warehouse. This was her first ever acting gig. She'd never performed this way before, and now suddenly she's an actress and she's doing a phenomenal job. There were some really emotional moments here with her grandmother, with Kingpin, which, I mean, Kingpin is the highlight of this show. It's, you know, yes, it's Echo's show, but I think Kingpin is one of the reasons we're all watching this, and Daredevil, of course, as well. But for those that haven't seen it yet, I do want to just kind of temper expectations. Daredevil's not in it a whole lot. He's only in the first episode. It's just for a small fight scene. Again, it's not anything huge, but I enjoyed it. It was used effectively. I thought it was well done, and adds to the history of Echo, and shows her capability of defending herself, and, you know, just how much of a badass she is. I mean, not only is she deaf, she's Native American, and she has a prosthetic leg, and she can still kick Daredevil's butt. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. And like I said, Kingpin, Vincent D'Onofrio, as always, fantastic in the role. A lot of people were really disappointed by his return in Hawkeye, thinking they kind of Disneyfied him. Here, especially with the TVMA, they really get to do him justice, and he is fantastic, because you get to see Willie Fisk, the Kingpin of crime, fully in all his glory. He's just fantastic. He is really a force to be reckoned with. He's really a scary, frightening presence here. And I just love his relationship with Maya, because the thing about him is, and this version of Kingpin that makes him so compelling, is that he does have real emotions. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about him in the Daredevil Netflix series, is his relationship with Vanessa. And obviously that's become a bit of a meme now, like, oh, you can't embarrass me in front of Vanessa. But it grounds him. It grounds him as a human, because he actually cares about another person, and he's doing these things for a reason, and he does that here as well. Even though he takes on this father like role for Maya, she calls him uncle. Even though he's not a great father slash uncle, and he definitely does some really bad things. I mean, he killed her father and has done many other terrible, terrible things. But you can tell that he does actually care about her. He does actually love her. He's just not great at showing it. But again, it adds to that deep emotional connection. And that is also one of the reasons I didn't really care for episodes 2 and 3, is because Kingpin wasn't really in those episodes a whole lot. But episode 4, he comes back full force, and it's fantastic. I think that's about all I can say without spoilers. I will say there is one post-credit scene, so make sure you stay for that. That's definitely some huge setup for the future. But now let's talk spoilers. There isn't a whole lot for spoilers to talk about, because this is a Marvel Spotlight series, so it's very contained. There's not a whole lot of Easter eggs or cameos or anything like that. I mean, obviously we do get the Daredevil cameo, but that was in the trailer. We already knew about that. Maya, she gets her powers, which even after watching it, I'm still not really even sure what her powers are, because it was presented in kind of like a healing way in the flashbacks, but then when she used them on Kingpin, she kind of like gave him visions in a way, or like I put him in some sort of mindscape. Like I said, I still don't really know exactly what her powers are. And like I mentioned previously, I don't feel it was super necessary. I don't think she needed to have powers. It really didn't add a whole lot. And it was a bit rushed, and was kind of like, almost felt like an afterthought, like it was added in very last minute, and didn't really feel necessary. And she got her cool costume and everything. I will say I don't love her costume. I do appreciate that it's connected to her heritage and her Native American tribe and all that stuff. But just like the shoulder pads and stuff looked a little bulky and a little odd. But action here was fantastic. That was something I probably should mention in the non-spoiler part, but action was fantastic. It is very Netflix Marvel, Daredevil type action, and it's fantastic. Really, for big spoiler stuff, I mean, Kingpin, one of my favorite moments, and especially because now we know for a legitimate fact the Netflix series are 100% canon. Kingpin whips out the frickin' hammer, and oh, I gasped out loud. I almost lost my marbles. Like, that was such an insane moment, and oh, that was probably my favorite scene of the whole show, when he was telling Maya about how he killed his father, and he was like, oh, I had to free myself. Here's the hammer that I kept with me all these years, that I used to kill my father. Now go ahead, free yourself. And she couldn't do it. Just such a fantastic moment. And obviously in the end, they have their bit of a fight between the two of them. Obviously he gets out, he escapes and everything, because he is being built up for bigger and better stuff down the line. We know he's being set up to be kind of the next Thanos of the MCU, but the street level Thanos. He's going to be the big bad for some of these upcoming projects, including Daredevil Born Again and Spider-Man 4. That is something I'm so excited for. A fantastic idea. And you see that in our post-credit scene, which it's very quick, it's very short. For those of you that have followed the channel here for a while, it's not really anything new that we didn't already know was going to happen, but it is blatantly presented here that Kingpin is going to be running for mayor of New York City, which at the end of the show, he's on his plane and he is on his way back to New York City, which next time we see him will be Daredevil Born Again, which that'll be a pretty big plot line for that show. Wilson Fisk running for mayor of New York City. And oh, I am so excited for that. So, in conclusion, like I said, Echo isn't perfect. It isn't the best. And there's episode 2 and 3, which I didn't love. But hey, I mean, 3 out of 5 episodes being good to great, I'm happy with. I'm satisfied. I'd say it lived up to expectations. And I do think I like this whole Marvel Spotlight thing, taking these smaller characters and just doing a smaller, more focused story just on their character. Echo went from being a character I really didn't care about a whole lot in Hawkeye to being a character that I'm legitimately looking forward to seeing again in the future. Will she be in Daredevil Born Again? Will she be in Spider-Man 4? I'm assuming she'll be in whatever big Kingpin crossover event we're building up to here with Devil's Reign. So I'm definitely, certainly excited for that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought Echo was good. And, everybody's like, oh, Marvel's back. Oh, Marvel is so over. The whole back and forth and everything. This would definitely be one of the, oh, Marvel is so back type things. But let's just accept it and just be positive in the future and say, like, Marvel has been back, and let's just say Marvel's good. It has its ups and downs, but everything does. It's not going to be perfect all the time, but Echo is certainly on the right track, and I really enjoyed the show. So, anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about Marvel Studios' Echo, a new branch for the MCU, not only with the Marvel Spotlight brand, but also our first TVMA project on Disney Plus. Super duper exciting. There's some big stuff going down here. I'm excited. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.